The boardroom went silent. Victoria Hale, 30 years old and heir to a billion-dollar empire, had just torpedoed the biggest acquisition deal of the year. Her father stood at the head of the table, face unreadable, while 12 executives stared at their laptops like they could disappear into the screens. She'd walked in confident, spoken with authority, and made decisions that sounded right, until the other side's legal team tore apart every assumption she'd built her pitch on. The deal collapsed in under 20 minutes. What she didn't know yet was that her father had already made a call. By morning, her credit cards would be frozen. Her apartment lease terminated, and a one-way ticket to a town she'd never heard of would be waiting on her desk. This wasn't a lesson, it was exile. If you want to see how a woman born into power learns what it really means to earn it, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Victoria had never been to a place where the stoplights blinked yellow after 9 o'clock. She stood at the edge of the bus station parking lot, suitcase wheels caught in a crack in the asphalt, staring at a town that looked like it had given up competing with the rest of the world sometime in the 90s. The bus that dropped her off was already rumbling back toward the highway, trailing diesel fumes. No one else had gotten off with her. The station itself was barely a building, more of a covered bench with a vending machine that had an out-of-order sign taped to it. Across the street, a diner with a flickering neon sign that read Rosie's. Next to that, a hardware store, a gas station, a couple of buildings that might have been offices or might have been abandoned. It was hard to tell. She pulled out her phone. No service. Of course, she muttered. Her last conversation with her father had been 3 days ago. He hadn't raised his voice. He never did. He'd simply told her that she was no longer employed by Hale Industries, that her accounts had been locked, and that she'd be living on a stipend of $75 a day until further notice. When she'd tried to argue, he'd hung up. When she'd tried to call back, the number went straight to voicemail. Her mother hadn't answered either. Victoria had spent the first day assuming it was some kind of test, a psychological exercise her father had read about in a leadership book. By the second day, when the locks on her apartment had been changed and her belongings were waiting in boxes in the lobby, she'd realized he was serious. Now she was here, wherever here was. She dragged her suitcase toward the diner. The wheels scraped against the pavement, one of them wobbling like it might fall off. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and fryer oil hit her immediately. The place was nearly empty, just an older man at the counter, reading a newspaper, and a woman in a booth by the window, staring at her phone. Victoria sat down at the counter. The older man glanced at her, nodded once, then went back to his paper. A woman in her 50s came out from the back, wiping her hands on a towel. She had short gray hair and the kind of face that looked like it had seen everything twice. "What can I get you?" the woman asked. "Coffee, black." The woman poured it without comment and set the cup down in front of her. Victoria wrapped her hands around it, even though it was warm outside. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, but the idea of food made her stomach turn. "You just get in?" the woman asked. "Yeah. Passing through?" Victoria hesitated. "I don't know yet." The woman nodded like that was a perfectly normal answer and walked back toward the kitchen. Victoria pulled out her phone again. Still no service. She had $75 a day, which sounded like a lot until she started doing the math. A cheap motel would eat up 50 of that, easy. Food, another 20. That left $5 for everything else. And she had no idea how long she was supposed to make this work. She felt a flash of anger so sharp it made her jaw ache. This was insane. She was a CEO. Had been a CEO. She'd managed departments, closed deals, sat in rooms with people twice her age, and made them listen. And now she was sitting in a diner in the middle of nowhere with no plan, no resources, and no idea what her father actually expected her to do. The door opened. A man walked in, maybe early 30s, wearing jeans and a faded blue t-shirt. He had a little girl with him, maybe 5 or 6, holding his hand. The girl had dark curly hair pulled into 2 uneven pigtails and was wearing a shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on it. "Hey, Rosie," the man said. "Ryan." The woman behind the counter smiled. "Usual?" "Yeah, and a chocolate milk for Ava." The girl climbed onto a stool 2 seats down from Victoria. The man, Ryan, sat next to her, glancing briefly at Victoria before looking away. Rosie set a glass of chocolate milk in front of the girl and started working on something at the grill. "Did you finish the drawing?" Ryan asked. Ava nodded, pulling a crumpled piece of paper out of her pocket. It was covered in crayon scribbles, mostly purple and green. That's really good, Ryan said, studying it seriously. Is that a dragon? It's a dinosaur, Ava said, like that should have been obvious. Oh, right. I see it now. Victoria found herself watching them without meaning to. There was something about the way he talked to the kid, like she was a real person, not just someone small he had to manage. It wasn't performative. It wasn't strategic. It was just easy. Rosie set 2 plates down, one with eggs and toast, one with pancakes cut into small pieces. Ava immediately started eating, syrup dripping off her fork. Ryan caught Victoria staring. Sorry, she said quickly, looking down at her coffee. It's fine. He didn't sound bothered. You new in town? Just got here. Visiting someone? No. He waited, like he expected her to say more. When she didn't, he just nodded and went back to his food. Victoria felt a strange twist of frustration. She wasn't used to people not pressing. In her world, silence was a negotiation tactic. You waited someone out until they filled the space with something useful. But Ryan didn't seem interested in playing that game. She finished her coffee and stood up. How much do I owe you? $2.50, Rosie said from behind the counter. Victoria pulled out a 5, set it down, and grabbed her suitcase. Outside, the air had cooled slightly. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the empty street. She had no idea where to go. The only motel she'd seen on the way in had looked like the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour. She stood there for a long moment, suitcase at her feet, trying to think. The door to the diner opened behind her. Ryan came out, Ava trailing behind him. You okay? He asked. I'm fine. He looked at her for a second, then at the suitcase. You got a place to stay? I'll figure it out. There's a motel about a mile up the road. It's not great, but it's cheap. Thanks. He hesitated, then sighed. Look, I don't know what your situation is, but if you need a place for a night or two, I've got a guest room. It's not much, but it's clean. Victoria stared at him. Why would you offer that? Because you look like you could use it. You don't know me. I know. He shrugged. But you're here, and I'm guessing it wasn't by choice. So, Ava tugged on his hand. Dad, I'm tired. I know, kiddo. We're going. He looked back at Victoria. Offer stands. Up to you. He turned and started walking toward a truck parked across the street. Ava climbed into the passenger seat, and Ryan got in after her. Victoria stood there, watching them drive away. She should have said no. She didn't take help from strangers. She didn't need help. She'd been in worse situations than this. High-pressure negotiations, hostile boardrooms, investors who wanted to see her fail. This was just a temporary inconvenience. She'd find the motel, get some sleep, and figure out her next move in the morning. But as she started walking, dragging her suitcase behind her, she realized she didn't actually know which direction the motel was. And it was getting dark. And she was so tired she could barely think straight. She stopped. Then she turned around and started walking in the direction the truck had gone. Ryan's house was small. Not small in the way her apartment had been small, carefully designed, efficiently laid out, expensive despite the square footage. This was just small. 1 story, white paint peeling near the roof, a front porch with 2 chairs and a rusted wind chime. The yard was mostly dirt, with a few patches of grass struggling to survive. Ryan was unloading groceries from the truck when she walked up. Changed your mind? He asked. Apparently. He didn't smile, but something in his expression softened slightly. Come on. Inside, the house was cluttered, but not dirty. Toys scattered across the living room floor. A stack of mail on the kitchen counter. A couch that looked like it had been sat on 10,000 times. Ava had already disappeared into another room. Guest room's down the hall, Ryan said, nodding toward a narrow hallway. Bathroom's next to it. Towels are in the closet. Thank you. Don't mention it. He went into the kitchen and started putting groceries away. Victoria stood in the doorway, suitcase at her feet, feeling completely out of place. You need help? She asked. I'm good. She watched him work for a moment, methodical, efficient, unbothered by her presence. Then she picked up her suitcase and walked down the hall. The guest room was barely big enough for a bed and a dresser. The walls were bare except for a calendar from 2 years ago. The bed had a faded blue comforter and 2 pillows that looked flat. But it was clean. and it was quiet. Victoria set her suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in days, she let herself stop moving, stop planning, stop trying to figure out the next step. She just sat there. And then, without meaning to, she started crying. She woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. For a second, she didn't know where she was. Then it came back. The bus station, the diner, Ryan's house. She checked her phone. 7 in the morning, still no service. She got up, splashed water on her face in the bathroom, and walked out into the living room. Ryan was at the kitchen table with Ava, tying her shoes. "Morning," he said. "Morning. There's coffee if you want it." "Thanks." She poured herself a cup and sat down at the table. Ava looked at her curiously, but didn't say anything. "I'm dropping Ava off at school," Ryan said. "I'll be back in about 20 minutes. Make yourself at home." "Okay." He grabbed a backpack off the counter and handed it to Ava. "Let's go, kiddo." Ava waved at Victoria as they walked out the door. Victoria sat there, sipping her coffee, trying to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. When Ryan came back, she was still at the table. "You eat?" he asked. "Not yet." He pulled a box of cereal out of the cabinet and set it on the table along with a bowl and a carton of milk. "Help yourself." "I'm not really hungry." "You should eat anyway." She wanted to argue, but she didn't have the energy. She poured herself a bowl and ate in silence while Ryan cleaned up the kitchen. "So," he said after a while, "how long are you planning to stay?" "I don't know." "That's fine, just asking." "I can pay you," she said quickly. "I have a daily allowance. It's not much, but I'm not asking for money." "Then why are you helping me?" He looked at her, expression unreadable. "Because I can." It wasn't an answer, or maybe it was, and she just didn't understand it. "I need to find a job," she said. "What kind of work do you do?" "I was a CEO." He raised an eyebrow. "Of what?" "A manufacturing company, Hale Industries." "Never heard of it." "Most people haven't." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So what happened?" "I screwed up." "And they sent you here?" "My father sent me here." "Huh." She waited for him to ask more, but he didn't. He just nodded like that explained enough. "There's not a lot of work around here," he said, "but Rosie's usually looking for help at the diner, and the hardware store hires seasonal workers sometimes. I don't know how to do either of those things. You'll figure it out." She wanted to tell him that she didn't figure things out. She planned them, strategized them, delegated them. But something in his tone made her stop. "I'll go talk to Rosie," she said. "Good." He grabbed his keys off the counter. "I've got to get to work. I'll be back around 6. Lock the door if you leave." "Where do you work?" "I run a carpentry shop. Small stuff. Cabinets, furniture, repairs." "You own it?" "Yeah." "How long have you been doing that?" "About 5 years." She wanted to ask more. How he'd started, how he managed it, what his revenue model was. But he was already halfway to the door. "See you later," he said, and then he was gone. Victoria sat there for a long time, staring at the empty cereal bowl. Then she got up, washed it, and walked out the door. Rosie looked up when Victoria walked into the diner. "Back already?" she said. "I need a job." Rosie set down the rag she'd been using to wipe down the counter. "You ever worked in a diner before?" "No." "Ever worked in food service?" "No." "Can you take orders without writing them down?" "I don't know." Rosie studied her for a moment, then sighed. "You can start tomorrow, 6 in the morning. Wear something you don't mind getting dirty." "That's it?" "That's it." Victoria blinked. "You're not going to ask for a resume? References? Do you have either of those?" "No." "Then what's the point?" Rosie turned back to the counter. 6 o'clock. Don't be late." Victoria stood there, caught off guard by how easy it had been. In her world, hiring took weeks. Background checks, interviews, salary negotiations. Here, it had taken less than 2 minutes. "Thank you," she said. Rosie waved her off. "Don't thank me yet. You might hate it." She didn't hate it, but she wasn't good at it either. The first day, she spilled coffee on a customer, forgot 2 orders, and couldn't figure out how to work the register. Rosie watched her struggle for about an hour before stepping in. "You're thinking too hard," Rosie said. "Just write it down, bring it to the kitchen, and don't overthink it." I'm not overthinking. I'm trying to be efficient. Efficient doesn't matter if you can't get the order right. Victoria bit back a response and forced herself to slow down. By the end of the shift, her feet hurt, her back ached, and she smelled like grease. But she'd made it through. Rosie handed her $40 in cash. You did okay. I spilled coffee on someone. Yeah, that happens. Victoria looked down at the bills in her hand. $40. She'd made more than that in the time it took to send an email, but somehow this felt different. Same time tomorrow? Rosie asked. Yeah. She walked back to Ryan's house, exhausted but weirdly satisfied. Ryan was in the kitchen when she got there, making dinner. Ava was at the table, coloring. How'd it go? He asked. I survived. That's a start. She sat down at the table, too tired to move. You hungry? Ryan asked. Yeah. He set a plate in front of her. Spaghetti, simple, no fancy sauce or garnish. Just pasta and marinara. She ate without saying anything, too tired to talk. Ava watched her, curious. Do you like dinosaurs? Ava asked. Victoria looked up. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. I like them a lot. What's your favorite? T-Rex, because they're big and scary. That makes sense. Ava went back to her coloring, satisfied. Ryan sat down across from her. You can stay as long as you need to. Victoria looked at him. Why are you doing this? I told you because I can. That's not a reason. It's the only one I've got. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and went back to her food. The days started to blur together. She worked at the diner 6 days a week, 6-hour shifts that left her too tired to do much else. At night, she'd come back to Ryan's house, eat dinner, and fall asleep before 9. It wasn't the life she'd imagined. It wasn't even close. But it was stable, and for the first time in weeks, she wasn't actively spiraling. Ryan didn't ask her about her past, didn't push her to talk. He just let her exist in his space, no expectations, no pressure. Ava warmed up to her slowly. She'd bring her drawings to show Victoria or ask her to help with puzzles or sit next to her on the couch while Ryan made dinner. It was strange being around a kid. Victoria had never spent time with children. They'd always seemed like a different species, unpredictable, loud, exhausting. But Ava wasn't like that. She was quiet, thoughtful, observant. She reminded Victoria of herself in a way she couldn't quite articulate. One night, about 2 weeks in, Ava fell asleep on the couch next to Victoria. Ryan came out of the kitchen and stopped when he saw them. She likes you, he said quietly. I don't know why. Because you don't treat her like she's fragile. Victoria looked down at Ava, curled up against her side. I don't know how to treat kids. You're doing fine. He picked Ava up carefully and carried her down the hall. Victoria stayed on the couch, staring at the TV that wasn't even on. When Ryan came back, he sat down in the chair across from her. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. Why are you doing this alone? He was quiet for a long moment. Ava's mom left when she was 2, just walked out one day and didn't come back. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Do you ever hear from her? No. He leaned back in the chair. And I don't want to. Victoria didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. What about you? Ryan asked. You ever think about going back? To what? Your old life. She thought about it. The office, the meetings, the constant pressure to be 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The version of herself that had walked into that boardroom and destroyed everything. I don't know if I can, she said. You will eventually. How do you know? Because you're not the kind of person who stays in one place. She looked at him, surprised. You don't know me. I know enough. Well, 3 weeks in, Victoria thought she was starting to get the hang of things. She'd learned the diner's rhythm, when the regulars came in, what they ordered, how to move through the space without tripping over herself. She'd started recognizing people around town, the guy who ran the hardware store, the woman who worked at the post office, the couple who came in every Saturday for pancakes. It wasn't home, but it was becoming familiar. And then she made a mistake. Ryan had mentioned once that his carpentry shop was struggling. Orders were down, and he was spending more time fixing old furniture than building new pieces. It was a business problem, and business problems were something Victoria understood. So she decided to help. She spent a week analyzing everything she could: his pricing structure, his client base, his supply chain. Then she put together a strategy, a real one, the kind she would have presented in a boardroom. She waited until Ava was asleep, then sat Ryan down at the kitchen table and walked him through it. "You're undercharging," she said, pointing to the numbers she'd written out. "If you raise your prices by 20% and focus on custom work instead of repairs, you'll increase your profit margin significantly." Ryan looked at the paper, then at her. "I can't raise my prices." "Why not?" "Because most of my clients can't afford it." "Then find new clients." "Where?" "Expand your reach, build a website, run ads, market yourself to people outside this town." "I don't want clients outside this town." Victoria frowned. "Why not?" "Because I live here. The people I work for are my neighbors. I'm not going to price them out just to make more money." "That's not sustainable." "Maybe not, but it's how I want to do it." She stared at him, frustrated. "You're leaving money on the table." "I'm fine with that." "But you could be doing so much more." "Victoria." His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this isn't your business. It's mine." "I'm just trying to help." "I know, but I didn't ask for help." She sat back, stung. Ryan sighed. "Look, I get that you're used to fixing things, but not everything needs to be fixed. Your business is struggling." "Yeah, and I'll figure it out." "How?" "The same way I always do." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that his way wasn't working, that he was being stubborn, that he needed to think bigger. But something in his expression stopped her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "It's fine." "No, it's not." She looked down at the paper, covered in numbers and projections that suddenly felt meaningless. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Be here. Be normal." Ryan didn't say anything for a long time. Then he stood up, walked over to the sink, and filled a glass with water. "You're trying too hard," he said, setting the glass down in front of her. "You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to show up." "I don't know how to do that either." "Then start small." He walked down the hall, leaving her alone at the table. Victoria sat there, staring at the strategy she'd spent a week building. Then she crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. The next morning, Victoria woke up before her alarm. She lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Ryan in her head. The way he'd looked at her when she'd laid out her strategy. Not angry, just tired. Like he'd been through this before with someone else. She got up, got dressed, and walked to the diner in the pre-dawn quiet. The streets were empty except for a dog wandering across the road and a truck idling outside the gas station. She let herself in through the back door and started the coffee maker before Rosie arrived. When Rosie came in 20 minutes later, she stopped in the doorway. "You're early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." Rosie hung up her jacket and tied on her apron. "Something on your mind?" "Not really." "You're a terrible liar." Victoria poured herself a cup of coffee and didn't answer. Rosie started pulling ingredients out of the fridge. "You know, when I first opened this place, I had all these ideas about how to make it bigger, franchise it maybe, expand the menu, hire a real staff." "What happened?" "I realized I didn't actually want any of that." Rosie cracked eggs into a bowl. "I just thought I was supposed to." Victoria looked at her. "How did you know the difference?" "I didn't. Not for a long time." Rosie whisked the eggs with more force than necessary. "But eventually I figured out that wanting something and thinking you should want something aren't the same thing." The first customer of the day walked in, a man in coveralls who ordered coffee and a breakfast burrito. Victoria took the order, brought it to Rosie, and went back to wiping down tables that were already clean. By mid-morning, the diner was full. Victoria moved through the space on autopilot, refilling coffee, taking orders, clearing plates. She didn't think. She just did. Around 11, a woman came in with 2 kids, both under 10. They were loud, messy, and kept changing their minds about what they wanted to eat. The woman looked exhausted. Victoria brought them water and waited while the kids argued about whether they wanted pancakes or waffles. "Just pick one," the woman said, rubbing her temples. "But I want both," the younger one whined. "You can't have both." "Why not?" "Because I said so." Victoria crouched down next to the table so she was eye level with the kids. How about this? You get pancakes, you get waffles, and you share. Deal? The kids looked at each other, then nodded. The woman looked at Victoria like she'd just performed a miracle. Thank you. No problem. When Victoria brought the order back to the kitchen, Rosie was smiling. What? Victoria said. Nothing. You're just getting the hang of it. Victoria didn't respond, but something warm settled in her chest. The rest of the shift passed quickly. By the time she clocked out, her feet hurt and her shirt smelled like syrup, but she didn't mind. She walked back to Ryan's house, taking the long route past the hardware store and the post office. The town was small enough that she could walk from one end to the other in 20 minutes, but she'd started noticing things she'd missed before. The way the light hit the buildings in the afternoon, the sound of wind chimes on someone's porch, the old man who sat outside the barbershop every day reading the same newspaper. It wasn't beautiful, but it was real. When she got to the house, Ryan's truck was in the driveway. She found him in the backyard building something out of wood. Ava was sitting in the grass nearby, playing with a toy truck. Hey, Victoria said. Ryan looked up. Hey, what are you making? Bookshelf, for Ava's room. Victoria watched him work for a moment. His movements were precise, deliberate, no wasted effort. Can I help? She asked. He glanced at her. You know how to use a drill? No? Then probably not. She sat down on the porch steps. Ava abandoned her truck and came over, climbing onto the step next to her. Do you have a house? Ava asked. I used to. Where is it? Far away. Why did you leave? Victoria didn't know how to answer that. I had to. Ava seemed to accept this. Do you miss it? Sometimes. I miss my mom sometimes, Ava said, picking at a loose thread on her shorts. But Dad says she's not coming back. Victoria looked at the little girl, surprised by the matter-of-fact way she said it. Does that make you sad? A little. But Dad says it's okay to be sad. He's right. Ava looked up at her. Are you sad? Victoria thought about it. Yeah, a little. That's okay. Ryan came over, wiping sawdust off his hands. Ava, go wash up for dinner. Okay. Ava hopped off the step and ran inside. Ryan sat down next to Victoria. For a while, neither of them said anything. I'm sorry about last night, Victoria said finally. You already apologized. I know, but I mean it. He nodded. I know you do. I just don't know how to not try to fix things. Then don't stop. Just ask first. She looked at him. Ask what? If I want your help. It sounded so simple, but it hadn't even occurred to her. Okay, she said. They sat there until Ava called from inside that she was hungry. Ryan stood up, brushed off his jeans, and headed toward the door. Victoria followed. Dinner that night was grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Nothing fancy. But Ava ate without complaining, and Ryan didn't look as tired as he usually did, and Victoria realized she was starting to feel like part of something instead of just someone passing through. After dinner, Ava asked Victoria to read her a bedtime story. Victoria had never read to a kid before, but she sat on the edge of Ava's bed and opened the book Ava handed her. Something about a bear who didn't want to hibernate. Ava fell asleep halfway through. Victoria set the book down carefully and turned off the light. When she came back to the living room, Ryan was on the couch, staring at his phone. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, just checking email. She sat down in the chair across from him. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you stay here? He looked up. What do you mean? You're good at what you do. You could move somewhere bigger, make more money, have more opportunities. I don't want more opportunities. Why not? He set his phone down. Because this is home. Ava's happy here. I'm happy here. That's enough. Victoria tried to imagine being satisfied with enough. She'd spent her entire life chasing more power, more success, more proof that she deserved the name she'd been born with. The idea of stopping had never even crossed her mind. I don't think I know how to be happy with enough, she said. That's because you've never had to be. She didn't argue. He was right. It's not a bad thing, Ryan added, wanting more, as long as you know why you want it. I don't think I do. Then maybe that's what you're supposed to figure out. She let that sit for a moment. Then she stood up. I'm going to bed. Good night. She paused in the doorway. Ryan? Yeah? Thank you for letting me stay. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I want to. He nodded, and she went down the hall to the guest room. That night, she dreamed about the boardroom. But this time, when the deal fell apart, she didn't freeze. She just stood up and walked out. Bah! The next few days passed without incident. Victoria worked her shifts, came home, ate dinner with Ryan and Ava, and went to bed. It was routine, predictable, and strangely comforting. But then on Thursday, everything shifted. She was at the diner during the lunch rush when a man walked in wearing a suit. He stood out immediately. Everyone else in the place was in jeans or work clothes. He sat down at the counter and pulled out his phone. Victoria brought him water and a menu. What can I get you? Just coffee, black. She poured it and set it down in front of him. He didn't look up. She went back to taking orders, but she kept noticing him. The way he sat. The way he checked his watch every few minutes. The way he didn't belong. When the lunch rush died down, she refilled his coffee. You waiting for someone? She asked. He looked up, startled. What? You keep checking your phone. Thought maybe you were meeting someone. No, just killing time. You passing through? Something like that. She nodded and went back to the register. But something about him felt off. An hour later, he was still there. He'd ordered a sandwich but barely touched it. He kept looking out the window like he was expecting something. Rosie came up beside her. You know him? No. He's been here for 2 hours. I noticed. Think he's okay? I don't know. Rosie wiped down the counter. Well, if he's not gone by closing, we're kicking him out. But before closing, he left. Paid in cash, didn't leave a tip, and walked out without a word. Victoria watched him get into a black sedan and drive away. Weird, Rosie muttered. Yeah. Victoria didn't think about it again until she got back to Ryan's house and saw the same black sedan parked across the street. She stopped on the sidewalk, staring at it. The windows were tinted. She couldn't see inside. Ryan came out onto the porch. You okay? There's a car. He looked where she was pointing. So? The guy who was driving it was at the diner earlier. He sat there for 2 hours doing nothing. Ryan frowned. You think he followed you? I don't know. They stood there for a moment, watching the car. Then the engine started and it pulled away from the curb and drove off. Ryan looked at her. You want to tell me what's going on? I don't know what's going on. Victoria. She sighed. My father sent me here. Cut me off from everything. I haven't heard from him in over a month. For all I know, he's keeping tabs on me. With a guy in a suit? It's how he operates. Ryan didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. If you see that car again, let me know. Okay. They went inside. Ava was at the table, coloring. She looked up when they came in. Who was that? She asked. Nobody, Ryan said. Just someone passing through. Ava went back to her drawing, unbothered, but Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. The next morning, the car was back. Victoria saw it on her way to work, parked outside the gas station. Same black sedan, same tinted windows. She kept walking, but her heart was pounding. At the diner, she told Rosie. You sure it's the same car? Rosie asked. Positive. Maybe you should call the sheriff. And say what? Someone's parked on a public street? Rosie didn't have an answer for that. Victoria tried to focus on work, but she kept glancing out the window, half expecting to see the car pull up. It didn't. But when her shift ended and she walked outside, the man from the day before was standing by the door. She stopped. Victoria Hale, he said. Not a question. Who are you? My name's Carter. I work for your father. Her stomach dropped. What do you want? Just to talk. I don't have anything to say to him. He's not asking you to talk to him. He's asking you to listen. I'm not interested. Carter pulled an envelope out of his jacket and held it out. He wanted me to give you this. Victoria stared at it. What is it? A letter. I don't want it. Take it or don't. That's up to you. He set it on the bench next to the door. But he's coming here in 3 weeks. Thought you should know. Her heart stopped. He's what? Coming here to see how you're doing. He can't do that. He can. And he will. Carter turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think he's proud of you. He has a funny way of showing it. Carter didn't respond. He just walked to his car and drove away. Victoria stood there staring at the envelope. Then she picked it up, shoved it in her bag, and walked home. She didn't open the letter right away. She set it on the dresser in the guest room and tried to ignore it. But it sat there, impossible to avoid, like a weight pressing down on everything. At dinner, Ryan noticed. You okay? He asked. Fine. You sure? Yeah. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push. After Ava went to bed, Victoria sat on the porch, staring at the empty street. Ryan came out and sat next to her. You want to talk about it? He asked. Not really. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while. Then Victoria spoke. My father's coming here. Ryan looked at her. When? 3 weeks. What are you going to do? I don't know. You could leave. Where would I go? He didn't have an answer for that. I spent my whole life trying to prove I was good enough, Victoria said quietly. Good enough to run the company. Good enough to carry the name. Good enough to be his daughter. And then I failed. Spectacularly. In front of everyone. So? She looked at him. So now he's coming to see if I've learned anything. Have you? She thought about it. The diner, the town, Ava, Ryan. The way her life had slowed down enough that she could actually see it. I don't know, she said. Maybe. Ryan leaned back in his chair. You know what I think? What? I think you're so worried about what he's going to see that you're not paying attention to what's actually happening. What do you mean? You're different than you were a month ago. You show up, you do the work, you don't complain. That's not nothing. It's not enough. Why not? She didn't have an answer. Ryan stood up. You should open the letter. I don't want to. I know, but you should anyway. He went inside, leaving her alone on the porch. Victoria sat there for a long time. Then she went to her room, pulled the envelope out of her bag, and opened it. The letter was short. Just a few lines in her father's precise handwriting. Victoria, you've been gone 6 weeks. I assume you've spent that time feeling sorry for yourself. I hope you've also spent it learning something. I'll be there on the 15th. We'll talk then. E. Hale. She read it twice. Then she folded it up and shoved it back in the envelope. Her father hadn't asked how she was, hadn't acknowledged anything she'd been through. He'd just told her he was coming and expected her to be ready. She felt the anger rise up again, sharp and familiar. But underneath it was something else, something quieter. Fear. Because she didn't know if she'd learned anything, and she didn't know what would happen if she hadn't. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Victoria worked longer shifts at the diner, partly because Rosie needed the help and partly because it kept her from thinking too much. She started getting to know the regulars better, learned their names, their usual orders, the small details of their lives that they shared without being asked. There was Tom, who came in every morning for black coffee and a plain bagel. He'd lost his wife 2 years ago and still wore his wedding ring. There was Linda, who ordered pancakes for her grandson every Saturday and always left a $10 tip, even though the bill was never more than $8. There was Marcus, who worked night shifts at the factory and stopped by for breakfast at 6 in the morning, so tired he could barely keep his eyes open. They weren't impressive people. They didn't run companies or close deals or make decisions that affected thousands of employees. But they showed up, every day. And somehow that felt like it mattered more than anything Victoria had ever done. One afternoon, she was clearing tables when she overheard 2 women talking in the corner booth. "Did you hear about the Johnsons?" one of them said. "No." "What happened?" "Their barn caught fire last week. Lost everything." "That's terrible." "Yeah, a bunch of us are putting together a fundraiser, trying to help them rebuild." Victoria stopped wiping the table. "What kind of fundraiser?" The women looked up, surprised. "Just a bake sale and a raffle, nothing fancy. Can I help?" They exchanged a glance. "You sure?" "Yeah." "Okay, we're meeting at the church tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Victoria nodded and went back to work. That night she told Ryan, "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know, but I want to." He looked at her for a moment, then smiled. "Okay." The next night, Victoria showed up at the church. She'd expected maybe 10 people. There were 30. They divided into groups, one for the bake sale, one for the raffle, one for coordinating donations. Victoria joined the raffle group and spent 2 hours calling local businesses to ask for donations. It was awkward at first. She didn't know how to ask for things without sounding like she was making a business pitch. But eventually, she found a rhythm. And by the end of the night, they'd secured donations from 15 businesses. On her way out, one of the women from the diner stopped her. "Thanks for helping," she said. "No problem." "I mean it. We need all the help we can get." Victoria nodded, surprised by how good it felt to be needed. The fundraiser was held the following Saturday. The whole town showed up. Victoria worked the raffle table, selling tickets and calling out numbers. Ava helped her, drawing the winning tickets out of a bucket and handing them to Victoria to announce. By the end of the day, they'd raised over $3,000. The Johnsons stood in the middle of the crowd, looking overwhelmed. Mrs. Johnson was crying. Mr. Johnson kept shaking people's hands, saying thank you over and over. Victoria watched from the edge of the crowd, something tight in her chest. Ryan came up beside her. "You did good." "I didn't do that much." "You showed up. That's enough." She looked at him. "Is it?" "Yeah, it is." That night, lying in bed, Victoria thought about what Ryan had said, about showing up, about being enough. For the first time in weeks, she let herself believe it might be true. But then, 3 days before her father was supposed to arrive, everything fell apart. It started with Ava. Victoria got home from the diner around 3 in the afternoon and found Ryan sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. Ava was lying on the couch next to him, wrapped in a blanket. "What's wrong?" Victoria asked. "She's got a fever," Ryan said. "Started this morning. I thought it would go down, but it's getting worse." Victoria knelt down next to the couch. Ava's face was flushed, her eyes half closed. "Did you take her to the doctor?" Victoria asked. "There's no doctor here. Closest clinic is 40 minutes away." "Then take her there." "I can't. I've got a delivery I have to finish by tonight. If I don't, I lose the client." Victoria stared at him. "She's sick." "I know, but I can't afford to lose this job." "Ryan, I'll take her tomorrow if she's not better." "That's not good enough." He looked at her, jaw tight. "What do you want me to do, Victoria? I'm doing the best I can." She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped, because she could see it in his face, the exhaustion, the fear, the weight of trying to hold everything together alone. "Let me take her," she said. He blinked. "What?" "Let me take her to the clinic. You finish the delivery. I'll take care of her." "You don't have a car." "I'll borrow yours." "You don't know where the clinic is." "I'll figure it out." He hesitated, then handed her the keys. "It's on Route 9, about 30 miles north. You'll see the sign." "Okay." She scooped Ava up carefully. The little girl didn't protest, just curled against her shoulder. Ryan stood up. "Victoria, I've got her." He nodded, and she carried Ava out to the truck. The drive was longer than she expected. The road was narrow and winding, cutting through fields and patches of forest. Ava dozed in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window. Victoria kept one hand on the wheel and one hand on Ava's arm, checking every few minutes to make sure she was still breathing. When they finally reached the clinic, it was almost empty. A nurse took Ava back immediately, and Victoria sat in the waiting room staring at the clock. An hour later, the doctor came out. "She's okay," he said. "Just a bad flu. We gave her some medicine. She should be fine in a few days." Victoria let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Can I see her?" "Of course." Ava was sitting on the examination table, sipping juice from a small carton. She looked up when Victoria came in. "Hi," she said, her voice small. "Hi." Victoria sat down next to her. "How are you feeling?" "Better?" "Good." Ava leaned against her, and Victoria put an arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being. When they got back to the house, Ryan was waiting on the porch. He stood up when he saw them. "Is she okay?" he asked. "She's fine," Victoria said. "Just the flu." He let out a breath. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me." "Yeah, I do." He carried Ava inside and put her to bed. When he came back out, Victoria was still standing in the driveway. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, but she wasn't. Something had shifted, and she didn't know what to do with it. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ava's small hand in hers, thinking about the way Ryan had looked at her when she'd brought Ava home, thinking about the fact that in 3 days her father would be here and everything would change. And for the first time since she'd arrived, she wasn't sure she wanted to leave. The morning her father was supposed to arrive, Victoria woke up at 4 and couldn't fall back asleep. She lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle around her, the creak of old wood, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing on the main road. She thought about getting up, making coffee, going for a walk. But she didn't move. She just stared at the ceiling and tried to prepare herself for something she had no idea how to handle. By 5:30, she gave up on sleep entirely. She got dressed and went to the kitchen. Ryan was already there, pouring cereal into a bowl. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He nodded, like he understood. "You want breakfast?" "I'm not hungry." "You should eat anyway." She wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She poured herself coffee and sat down at the table. Ryan ate in silence for a while. Then he set his spoon down. "You don't have to see him if you don't want to." "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because if I don't, he'll just keep coming back." Ryan didn't say anything to that. He just picked up his bowl, rinsed it in the sink, and grabbed his keys off the counter. "I'm taking Ava to school," he said. "I'll be back in 20. "Okay." He paused at the door. "Victoria?" "Yeah?" "You're going to be fine." She wanted to believe him, but she didn't. After he left, she sat at the table, drinking her coffee and watching the sky lighten through the window. She thought about the letter her father had sent, the cold, clinical tone, the assumption that she'd spent the last 2 months feeling sorry for herself. Maybe she had at first, but somewhere along the way, something had changed. She'd stopped thinking about what she'd lost and started paying attention to what was right in front of her. The question was whether her father would see that, or whether he'd only see what he expected to see. At 8 o'clock, her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Arriving at 10. Meet me at the diner." She stared at the message, her stomach twisting. Then she typed back a single word. "Fine." She got up, grabbed her jacket, and walked out the door. Ito. The diner was busier than usual. Saturday mornings always were. Families coming in for pancakes, old men nursing coffee and reading the paper, teenagers slouched in booths with their phones out. Victoria walked in and scanned the room. Her father wasn't there yet. Rosie looked up from behind the counter. "You okay?" "Yeah, just meeting someone." "Anyone I know?" "My father." Rosie raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. "You want coffee while you wait?" "Please." Victoria sat down at a corner booth and watched the door. Every time it opened, her heart jumped, but it was never him. At 10:15, a black town car pulled up outside. Victoria's chest tightened. The driver got out first, opened the back door, and her father stepped out. Edward Hale was 62, tall, and still carried himself like a man who owned every room he walked into. His suit was perfectly tailored, his hair neatly combed, his expression unreadable. He walked into the diner, looked around, and spotted Victoria immediately. She didn't stand up. He crossed the room and sat down across from her. "Victoria," he said. "Dad." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he gestured to the coffee in front of her. "Is that any good?" "It's fine." He flagged down Rosie and ordered a cup for himself. When she brought it, he took a sip and grimaced slightly. "It's been 2 months," he said. "I know." "You look different." "I am different." He studied her for a moment. "How so?" She didn't know how to answer that, so she didn't. Her father set his cup down. "I assume you've spent this time thinking about what happened." "Among other things." "And?" "And what?" "What did you learn?" She looked at him, feeling the familiar anger start to build. "You sent me here with no money, no resources, and no explanation. What exactly was I supposed to learn?" "That you don't know everything." "I already knew that." "Did you?" He leaned back in his seat. "Because when you walked into that meeting, you acted like you did. You made assumptions, ignored the details, and tried to force a deal that was never going to work. I made a mistake." "You made several." She clenched her jaw. "So you cut me off and sent me away. That was your solution." It was the only solution. You needed to understand what it means to work for something, to struggle, to fail without a safety net. I've been struggling my entire life, he laughed. A short, sharp sound. No, Victoria, you've been coasting. You had a title, a salary, and a name that opened doors before you even walked into the room. That's not struggle. That's privilege. I worked for that position. You inherited it. The words hit harder than she expected, because they were true. Her father took another sip of coffee. So tell me, what have you been doing here? Working. At what? A diner. He looked around as if noticing the place for the first time. Here? Yes? Doing what? Taking orders, serving food, cleaning tables. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "And you think that's enough?" Enough for what? To prove you've changed. She stared at him. I'm not trying to prove anything to you. Then why are you still here? The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her father leaned forward. I sent you here to learn a lesson. I assumed you'd last a week, maybe 2. Then you'd come crawling back, ready to do whatever it took to get your life back. He paused. But you didn't. No. Why not? She thought about Ryan, about Ava, about the town, the fundraiser, the way people here looked out for each other without expecting anything in return. Because I wasn't ready, she said. And now? I don't know. Her father studied her, his expression unreadable. You've always been smart, Victoria, but you've never been wise. There's a difference. I know that. Do you? He set his cup down. Smart people know how to win. Wise people know when to stop playing. She didn't respond. He stood up, pulled out his wallet, and set a 20 on the table. I'll be in town for the rest of the day. We'll talk more later. Where are you staying? The motel on Route 9. She almost laughed. The idea of her father staying at a place with stained carpets and coin-operated air conditioning was absurd. I'll see you tonight, he said. Then he walked out. Victoria sat there, staring at the $20 bill, trying to process what had just happened. Rosie came over and refilled her coffee. That him? Yeah. He seems nice. Victoria looked up at her. Really? Rosie shrugged. I've seen worse. Victoria didn't know what to say to that, so she just drank her coffee and tried not to think about the fact that her father was here, and nothing felt resolved. Mutt. She didn't go back to Ryan's house right away. Instead, she walked around town, past the hardware store and the post office, and the park where a few kids were playing on the swings. She ended up at the carpentry shop. Ryan was inside, sanding down a piece of wood. He looked up when she came in. How'd it go? He asked. I don't know. He set down the sandpaper. You want to talk about it? Not really. Fair enough. She leaned against the workbench, watching him work. He thinks I haven't learned anything. Have you? I think so, but I don't know if it's what he wanted me to learn. Ryan picked up the sandpaper again. Does that matter? I don't know. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know what I think? What? I think you're so focused on what he thinks that you're not paying attention to what you think. She looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, you've been here for 2 months. You've worked hard. You've helped people. You've shown up. That's not nothing. But you're still waiting for someone else to tell you it's enough. Because I don't know if it is. Then you're asking the wrong question. What's the right question? He looked at her. Do you want to go back? She opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. Because she didn't know. A month ago, the answer would have been yes. Absolutely. Without hesitation. But now, standing in this cramped shop with sawdust in the air and the sound of traffic outside, she wasn't sure. I don't know, she said quietly. Ryan nodded. Then maybe that's what you need to figure out. That night, her father called and told her to meet him at the motel. She drove there in Ryan's truck, her hands tight on the wheel. The motel was exactly as bad as she'd imagined. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, a parking lot full of potholes. Her father was standing outside his room when she pulled up. This place is a disaster, he said. I know. Why didn't you warn me? You didn't ask. He almost smiled. Then he gestured to the door. Come in. We need to talk. Inside, the room smelled like mildew and old carpet. Her father had set up his laptop on the desk and was reviewing something on the screen. Sit, he said, pointing to the bed. She sat. He closed the laptop and turned to face her. I've been thinking about what you said earlier. What part? All of it. He crossed his arms. You're right. I sent you here without explanation, without support. I expected you to figure it out on your own. And? And I'm not sure that was fair. She stared at him. You're apologizing? I'm acknowledging a mistake. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. He sat down in the chair across from her. But it's what I'm offering. She didn't know what to say to that. Her father leaned forward. I need to know if you're ready to come back. To what? The company, your position, your life. She felt something twist in her chest. What if I'm not? Then we'll figure something else out. Like what? I don't know yet. He looked at her. But I'm not going to force you. She wanted to believe him, but a lifetime of experience told her otherwise. What's the catch? She asked. There's no catch. There's always a catch, he sighed. Victoria, I'm trying to give you a choice. Take it or don't. But stop acting like I'm your enemy. Aren't you? No? His voice was firm. I'm your father, and I made a call I thought was right. Maybe it wasn't, but I did it because I care about you, not because I want to punish you. She looked at him, trying to find the lie, but she couldn't. I need time, she said. How much? I don't know. He stood up. I'm leaving tomorrow. You have until then to decide. That's not enough time. It's all I have. He opened the door, signaling the conversation was over. Victoria stood up and walked out without saying goodbye. When she got back to the house, Ryan and Ava were on the couch, watching a movie. Ava was curled up under a blanket, half asleep. Ryan looked up. You okay? Yeah. You sure? No. He paused the movie. You want to talk? Not right now. He nodded and went back to the movie. Victoria sat down in the chair across from them, staring at the screen without really watching. After a while, Ava fell asleep. Ryan carried her to bed, then came back and sat down next to Victoria. He wants me to come back, she said. To the company? Yeah. What did you say? That I need time. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Do you want to go back? I don't know. What's stopping you? She looked at him. This? You, Ava, this place. I didn't expect to care about any of it, but I do. He didn't say anything, just looked at her. I don't know how to choose, she said. If I go back, I lose this. If I stay, I lose everything I worked for. That's not true. Yes, it is. No. He leaned forward. You're acting like it's all or nothing, but it's not. You can go back and still come here. You can rebuild your career and still have a life. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You make it sound easy. It's not, but it's possible. She wanted to believe him, but she'd spent so long thinking in binaries, win or lose, success or failure, power or nothing, that the idea of something in between felt impossible. I don't know if I can do that, she said. Then don't decide tonight. My father's leaving tomorrow. So let him leave. You'll figure it out. She looked at him, searching his face for doubt, but there wasn't any. Why do you believe in me? She asked. He smiled. Because you showed up. That night she couldn't sleep again. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what she actually wanted. Not what her father wanted. Not what she thought she was supposed to want. What she wanted. The problem was, she didn't know. She'd spent her entire life chasing a version of success that had been defined for her before she was old enough to understand what it meant. And now, for the first time, she had the chance to choose something different. But she didn't know what that looked like. Around 3 a.m, she heard a sound from down the hall. She got up and walked toward it. Ava's door was open. The little girl was sitting up in bed, crying. Victoria stopped in the doorway. You okay? Ava looked up, startled. I had a bad dream. You want to talk about it? Ava shook her head. Victoria hesitated, then walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want me to stay for a bit? Ava nodded. Victoria sat there, not saying anything, just being present. After a while, Ava lay back down, her breathing evening out. Victoria? She whispered. Yeah? Are you going to leave? The question hit harder than it should have. I don't know. I don't want you to. Victoria looked down at the little girl, her chest tight. I don't want to either. Then don't. If only it were that simple. Ava fell back asleep, and Victoria stayed there for a long time, watching her breathe. Then she stood up carefully and walked back to her room. She didn't sleep. She just lay there, thinking about choices and consequences, and the fact that no matter what she decided, someone was going to be disappointed. The next morning, her father called. I'm leaving in an hour, he said. Do you have an answer? No? There was a long pause. Then he said, I'm not going to wait forever, Victoria. I know. Then what do you need? I need to figure out who I am without you telling me. Another pause. Fair enough. Really? Really? He sighed. Take the time you need, but don't take too long. I won't. And Victoria? Yeah? I meant what I said. I'm proud of you. Before she could respond, he hung up. She sat there, staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. Her father had given her space, actual space, for the first time in her life. She didn't know what to do with it. Later that day, she was at the diner when a woman came in with a folder full of papers. You're Victoria, right? The woman asked. Yeah. I'm Sarah. I run the community center. I heard you helped with the fundraiser. I did. Sarah set the folder on the counter. We're trying to start a small business mentorship program, help local entrepreneurs get off the ground. I was wondering if you'd be interested in helping. Victoria blinked. Me? You ran a company, didn't you? I did, but I'm not sure I'm the right person. You're exactly the right person, Sarah smiled. We don't need someone perfect. We need someone who knows what it's like to fail. Victoria didn't know what to say to that. Think about it, Sarah said. We meet next Thursday at 7. She left the folder and walked out. Victoria stood there, staring at it. Then she opened it and started reading. By the time her shift ended, she'd made up her mind. That night, she told Ryan. I'm staying, she said. He looked up from the stove. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He smiled. Good. I'm also going back to the city, part-time, to rebuild. How's that going to work? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. He nodded. You will. Ava came running into the kitchen. Are you staying? Victoria crouched down. Yeah, I'm staying. Ava threw her arms around her, and Victoria hugged her back, feeling something settle in her chest. For the first time in months, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next few days were a blur of planning. She called her father and told him she'd come back, but on her own terms. She'd work remotely part of the time, rebuild her reputation slowly, and focus on projects that actually mattered to her. He didn't argue. He just said, make it work. She also called the community center and told Sarah she was in. The first meeting was awkward. She didn't know how to talk to people who weren't in suits, who didn't speak in corporate jargon, who just wanted help getting a food truck off the ground or opening a small retail shop. But she learned. She started meeting with local entrepreneurs one-on-one, helping them build business plans, apply for loans, figure out pricing strategies. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she was actually helping people instead of just managing them. One afternoon, she was working with a woman named Carla who wanted to open a bakery. Carla had the recipes, the passion, and the vision, but she didn't have the financial knowledge. Victoria walked her through a basic P&L, explained cash flow, and helped her put together a pitch for the local bank. When they finished, Carla looked at her with tears in her eyes. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. Victoria felt something crack open inside her. You would have figured it out. Maybe, but you made it easier. That night, Victoria walked home feeling lighter than she had in years. Ryan was in the backyard working on the bookshelf. Ava was helping him, holding nails. How'd it go? He asked. Good. Really good. He smiled. Told you. She sat down on the porch steps, watching them work. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. The air smelled like cut grass and wood smoke. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. And for the first time in her life, that didn't feel like settling. It felt like choosing. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm Victoria hadn't known she was capable of. She'd wake up before dawn, work a shift at the diner, spend the afternoon meeting with entrepreneurs at the community center, and come home to dinner with Ryan and Ava. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, she'd take conference calls with her father's team, rebuilding relationships she'd damaged and slowly carving out a role for herself that didn't feel like pretending. It wasn't seamless. Some days she wanted to throw her phone across the room when a call went badly. Some days she burned the eggs at the diner and snapped at customers who didn't deserve it. Some days she looked at the stack of business plans on her desk and felt completely out of her depth. But she kept showing up. One morning in late October, she was at the diner when Tom came in earlier than usual. He sat down at the counter, but he didn't open his newspaper. "You okay?" Victoria asked, pouring his coffee. He stared at the cup. "My daughter called last night, wants me to move in with her, says I shouldn't be living alone anymore." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd think about it." He wrapped his hands around the mug. "But I've lived here for 40 years. I don't know how to be anywhere else." Victoria set the coffee pot down. "Do you want to move?" "No, but she's probably right. I'm getting older. Things are harder than they used to be." "That doesn't mean you have to leave." "Doesn't mean I should stay either." She didn't have an answer for that, so she just refilled his coffee and let him sit in silence. Later that afternoon, she was at the community center when Marcus walked in. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped. "You got a minute?" he asked. "Of course. Sit." He sat down across from her, rubbing his face. "I'm thinking about closing the shop." Marcus ran a small auto repair place on the edge of town. He'd been trying to expand, but the equipment costs were eating him alive. "What happened?" Victoria asked. "The bank turned down my loan, said the business wasn't stable enough." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. 20 years I've been doing this, and apparently that's not enough." "Did they say why?" "Cash flow, debt-to-income ratio, all the stuff I don't understand." Victoria pulled out a notebook. "Walk me through your numbers." They spent the next 2 hours going over everything: his revenue, his expenses, his projections. And slowly she started to see the problem. "You're not charging enough," she said. "I can't raise my prices. People here can't afford it." "Then you need to find customers who can. Expand your service area. Partner with dealerships in the next town over. Offer mobile repairs." "I don't know how to do any of that." "I do." She looked at him. "Let me help you put together a new proposal. We'll reapply to a different bank." Marcus stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because I can." He blinked, like he wasn't sure he'd heard her right. Then he nodded. "Okay, let's try." Over the next week, they rebuilt his entire business plan from scratch. Victoria helped him create realistic projections, identified new revenue streams, and coached him through a practice pitch until he could deliver it without stumbling. When he walked into the bank the second time, she went with him. The loan officer reviewed the new proposal, asked a few questions, and then leaned back in his chair. "This is much better," he said. "I'll take it to the committee. We should have an answer in 2 weeks." Outside, Marcus stopped on the sidewalk and just stood there. "You okay?" Victoria asked. "Yeah, He shook his head. "I didn't think this was possible." "It's not approved yet." "I know, but you made me believe it could be." She felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the one that showed up every time someone thanked her for something that felt so small. "You did the work," she said. "I just helped you see it differently." He nodded, but she could tell he didn't quite believe her. 2 weeks later, the loan came through. Marcus called her at the diner, shouting so loud she had to hold the phone away from her ear. "We got it! They approved it!" Victoria smiled, feeling something warm spread through her. "That's great, Marcus. Really great. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have." "No, I really couldn't." After she hung up, Rosie came over and leaned against the counter. "You look happy," Rosie said. "I am." "That's new," Victoria laughed. "Yeah, I guess it is." That night at dinner, she told Ryan and Ava about Marcus. "He got the loan," she said. "He's going to expand the shop." Ava looked up from her spaghetti. "What's a loan?" "It's when someone gives you money to help you do something and you pay them back over time," Ryan explained. "Like when you gave me $5 to buy Dad a birthday present?" "Sort of, but bigger." Ava nodded, satisfied, and went back to eating. Ryan looked at Victoria. "You helped him with that?" "Yeah." How many people are you working with now? 6, maybe 7 if this new bakery owner commits. That's a lot. It doesn't feel like a lot. That's because you're good at it. She looked at him, surprised. You think so? I know so. Something shifted in her expression. I never thought I'd be doing this. What did you think you'd be doing? Running a company, making deals, proving I could do what my father did. And now? Now I don't know if that's what I actually want. Ryan set down his fork. Then what do you want? She thought about it. A month ago, she wouldn't have had an answer. But now, sitting at this table with these people, the answer felt obvious. This, she said. I want to help people build things that matter to them. Not because it makes me look good or because it proves anything, just because it's worth doing. Ryan smiled. Then do that. It's not that simple. Why not? Because my father expects me to come back full-time eventually, and I don't know how to tell him I don't want to. So tell him. He won't understand. Maybe not. But that's his problem, not yours. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because he was right. Later that night, after Ava went to bed, Victoria sat on the porch with her laptop, staring at a blank email. She'd been trying to write to her father for an hour, but every version sounded wrong. Too defensive, too apologetic, too vague. Finally, she just started typing. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, about coming back. And I need to be honest with you. I don't think I want the same things I used to want. I'm not sure I ever did. I think I spent so long trying to be what you needed me to be that I forgot to figure out what I needed. I'm not saying I'm done with the company, but I can't be the person you're expecting me to be. Not anymore. I'm doing something here that matters, and I'm good at it. Not because of the name I was born with, but because I'm finally learning how to actually help people instead of just managing them. I hope you can understand that, but if you can't, I'll find a way to live with it. Victoria. She read it twice, then hit send before she could change her mind. Then she closed her laptop and sat in the dark, waiting for the panic to hit. It didn't. Instead, she felt lighter. The next morning, her father called. I got your email, he said. And? And I think you're making a mistake. Her stomach dropped. Of course you do. But, he continued, it's your mistake to make. She blinked. What? You're an adult, Victoria. You get to choose your life, even if I think you're wasting your potential. I'm not wasting it. I'm using it differently. That remains to be seen. She felt the anger flare up again. Why can't you just support me? I am supporting you. I'm letting you make your own choices. That's more than most people get. That's not support. That's tolerance. He sighed. What do you want from me, Victoria? I want you to be proud of me for who I am, not for who you think I should be. There was a long pause, then he said, I'll work on it. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was the one she got. Okay, she said. Okay. He hung up without saying goodbye. Victoria sat there staring at her phone, trying to figure out if she'd just won or lost. Then she decided it didn't matter. Done. By mid-November, the mentorship program had grown. What started with 6 entrepreneurs was now 12. Sarah had asked Victoria to lead a workshop on financial planning, and somehow she'd said yes. The night of the workshop, she stood in front of 15 people, most of whom she'd never met, and tried not to panic. Okay, she said. So, financial planning. It's not as complicated as it sounds. She walked them through the basics. Revenue projections, expense tracking, cash flow management. She kept it simple, used real examples, and tried not to sound like she was reading from a textbook. Halfway through, a man in the back raised his hand. What if you don't have any money to start with? He asked. Then you figure out what you can do without money. Build your reputation, offer services, find partners, start small and scale slowly. But what if that's not enough? Then you get creative, you bootstrap, you hustle, you do whatever it takes until it starts working. The man nodded, but she could tell he wasn't convinced. After the workshop, he came up to her. I'm trying to start a landscaping business, he said, but I can't afford equipment, can't get a loan, can't even afford to advertise. Do you have a truck? Yeah. Then start with what you can do with a truck. Lawn mowing, hauling, small jobs, build a client base, save up, then expand. That's going to take forever. Probably, but it's better than not starting at all. He thought about it, then nodded. Okay, I'll try. She watched him walk out, feeling that same tightness in her chest. Sarah came up beside her. You're really good at this. I'm just telling people what I would do. That's what makes you good at it. Victoria didn't know what to say to that, so she just packed up her things and headed home. Thanksgiving came faster than she expected. Ryan asked if she wanted to go to his sister's house for dinner, but Victoria could tell he wasn't thrilled about it. You don't have to invite me, she said. I want to, but fair warning, my sister's going to ask a lot of questions. About what? You, us, why you're still here. What are you going to tell her? The truth, that you're staying with us while you figure things out. And she's going to think we're together. Probably. Victoria felt her stomach flip. Are we? Ryan looked at her. I don't know. Are we? She didn't know how to answer that because somewhere along the way, the lines had blurred. She wasn't just staying in his guest room anymore. She was part of his life, part of Ava's life, and he was part of hers. But neither of them had said it out loud. I don't know, she said finally. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Thanksgiving dinner was exactly as awkward as Ryan had predicted. His sister Jennifer was nice but nosy. She asked Victoria 100 questions about where she was from, what she did, how long she was planning to stay. Victoria answered as vaguely as possible. Ava, oblivious to the tension, sat next to Victoria and insisted on sharing her mashed potatoes. After dinner, Jennifer cornered Ryan in the kitchen. Victoria couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Jennifer gesturing emphatically while Ryan stood there with his arms crossed, looking tired. When they came back out, Jennifer smiled at Victoria like nothing had happened. On the drive home, Ryan was quiet. You okay? Victoria asked. Yeah. Your sister doesn't like me. She doesn't know you. She thinks I'm using you. Ryan glanced at her. Are you? No? Then it doesn't matter what she thinks. Victoria looked out the window. I don't want to make your life harder. You're not. How do you know? Because if you were, I'd tell you. She wanted to believe him, but she knew how complicated this was. She was still figuring out her own life. She had no idea what she could offer him, or Ava, or anyone. Ryan, don't, he said. Don't what? Don't start overthinking this. We're fine. But we're fine, Victoria. She closed her mouth and let it go. When they got home, Ava was asleep in the back seat. Ryan carried her inside while Victoria unlocked the door. After he put Ava to bed, he came back out to the living room. Victoria was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. He sat down next to her. You want to talk about it? About what? Whatever's going on in your head. She looked at him. I don't know what I'm doing. With what? Any of it. The mentorship program. My father. You. You don't have to know. You just have to keep going. What if I screw it up? Then you screw it up, and you figure it out. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it wasn't that simple, but she was so tired of fighting, so instead she leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move, just sat there, steady and solid. And for the first time in weeks, she let herself stop trying to figure everything out. In early December, Victoria got a call from the bank Marcus had worked with. We've been getting inquiries, the loan officer said. Other business owners asking about the kind of proposal Marcus submitted. They want to know if you're available to help them. Victoria blinked. Me? Yes, we'd like to refer them to you if you're interested. Yeah, I'm interested. Great. I'll send them your contact information. After she hung up, she just sat there staring at her phone. This wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to be helping a few people on the side, not building something. But maybe that's what this was becoming. She called Sarah. I think I need to make this official, Victoria said. Make what official? The mentorship program, turn it into an actual organization, get funding, hire people, scale it. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You sure? No, but I think I have to try. Okay, then let's do it. Over the next few weeks, they put together a plan. Victoria reached out to a few foundations, applied for grants, and started building a network of volunteers. It was hard, harder than anything she'd done at her father's company, because this time it wasn't just about making money, it was about actually helping people, and she couldn't afford to screw it up. One night she was working late at the community center when Ryan showed up with takeout. "You've been here for 6 hours," he said, setting the bag on her desk. "I'm almost done." "You said that 2 hours ago." She looked up at him, bleary-eyed. "I have to finish this grant application by tomorrow." "Then finish it tomorrow." "I can't. The deadline—" "Victoria." He sat down across from her. "You're going to burn out." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." She wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because he was right. She'd been working nonstop for weeks, barely sleeping, barely eating, pushing herself the way she always did. "I don't know how to do this any other way," she said quietly. "Then learn." "How?" "By taking a break, eating dinner, going home." She looked at the grant application, half finished, sitting in front of her. Then she looked at Ryan. "Okay," she said. They ate in silence. Then she packed up her laptop and let him drive her home. In the truck, she stared out the window at the dark streets, feeling the exhaustion settle into her bones. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not letting me destroy myself." He glanced at her. "Someone's got to." When they got home, Ava was already asleep. Victoria went straight to her room, collapsed on the bed, and didn't wake up until morning. The grant came through 2 weeks later. $50,000. Enough to hire a part-time coordinator, rent office space, and expand the program to 3 neighboring towns. Victoria stood in the community center, staring at the approval email, unable to believe it was real. Sarah walked in. "Did you hear?" "Yeah." "This is huge, Victoria." "I know. We're going to help so many people." Victoria nodded, but she couldn't speak, because for the first time in her life, she'd built something that was entirely hers, not her father's, not the company's, hers, and it felt terrifying and exhilarating and completely right. That night, she told Ryan and Ava over dinner. "We got the grant," she said. Ava looked up. "What's a grant?" "It's money to help people," Ryan explained. "Like the loan?" "Sort of." Ava thought about it, then smiled. "That's good." Ryan looked at Victoria. "I'm proud of you." She felt her throat tighten. "Thanks. I mean it. This is a big deal." "It doesn't feel real yet." "It will." Later, after Ava went to bed, Victoria sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. Ryan came out and sat next to her. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About how different everything is now." "Good different or bad different?" "Good, I think." He nodded. "You've come a long way." "So have you." He looked at her, surprised. "Me?" "Yeah. You let someone into your life. That's not easy." He was quiet for a moment. "No, it's not." "Why did you?" "Because you needed it, and because I wanted to." She looked at him, really looked at him, the lines around his eyes, the way his hands were always busy, even when he was sitting still, the quiet strength that she'd come to rely on without even realizing it. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said. "You would have figured it out." "Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to." He smiled. "Me too." They sat there in the cold, the world quiet around them, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Victoria felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. By January, the organization had a name, Summit Ventures, and an office above the hardware store. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms with mismatched furniture and a coffee maker that only worked half the time, but it was theirs. Victoria spent her mornings at the diner and her afternoons at Summit. She'd hired a coordinator named Elena, a former teacher who knew everyone in town and had a gift for cutting through bureaucratic nonsense. Together, they were working with 18 entrepreneurs across 3 towns, helping them build businesses that ranged from mobile dog grooming to custom furniture to a food truck specializing in Vietnamese fusion. The work was exhausting. There were days when loan applications got rejected, when business plans fell apart, when people quit because they couldn't handle the pressure. But there were also days when someone's store opened, when a product launched, when a dream that had seemed impossible became real. Those days made everything else worth it. One afternoon in late January, Victoria was reviewing financials when her phone rang. Her father. She almost didn't answer, but she did. "Victoria," he said, "I'm coming back." Her stomach dropped. "When?" "Next week. I want to see what you've been doing." "Why?" "Because I'm curious. And because I think we need to talk." "About what?" "Your future." She closed her eyes. "Dad, I already told you. I know what you told me. But I think there's a compromise we haven't discussed." "What kind of compromise?" "Come to dinner next Friday. We'll talk then." Before she could respond, he hung up. Victoria sat there, staring at her phone, feeling the old anxiety creep back in. Elena looked up from her desk. "You okay?" "My father's coming back." "Is that a problem?" "I don't know yet." That night, she told Ryan. "He wants to talk about my future," she said. They were sitting at the kitchen table while Ava did homework. Ryan was fixing a broken chair leg, glue and wood shavings scattered across the table. "What do you think he's going to say?" Ryan asked. "Probably that I need to choose, either come back full-time or walk away completely." "And what do you want?" "I want both. I want to keep doing this and still be part of the company. But I don't know if that's possible." Ryan set down the chair leg. "Why not?" "Because my father doesn't do middle ground." "Then make him." She looked at him. "How?" "By not giving him a choice. You tell him what you're offering and let him decide if he wants to take it or leave it." "That's not how it works with him." "Then maybe it's time it did." Ava looked up from her homework. "Are you fighting?" "No," Victoria said quickly. "We're just talking." "About what?" "Grown-up stuff." Ava made a face. "That sounds boring." Ryan smiled. "It usually is." Ava went back to her homework, and Victoria went back to worrying. The week passed too quickly. Before she knew it, Friday had arrived, and she was getting ready for dinner with her father. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror trying to decide what to wear. Everything she owned was either too casual or too corporate. She finally settled on dark jeans and a blazer, somewhere in between. Ryan appeared in the doorway. "You look good." "I look nervous." "You look like yourself." She turned to face him. "What if this goes badly?" "Then it goes badly, but you'll survive." "How do you know?" "Because you've survived everything else." She wanted to believe him, but the knot in her stomach wouldn't loosen. Ava came running down the hall. "Can I come to dinner?" "Not this time, kiddo," Ryan said. "Why not?" "Because it's a business dinner." "That sounds even more boring than grown-up stuff." Victoria couldn't help but smile. "It probably will be." Ava hugged her. "Good luck." "Thanks." She drove to the restaurant her father had chosen, a place 40 minutes away, nicer than anything in town. When she walked in, he was already there, sitting at a corner table reading something on his phone. He looked up when she approached. "Victoria." "Dad." She sat down, and for a moment neither of them spoke. A waiter appeared, took their drink orders, and disappeared. Her father set his phone down. "You look different." "You said that last time." "I mean it more now. I'm still the same person." "No, you're not." He leaned back in his chair. "You're more grounded, less defensive." She didn't know what to say to that. Their drinks arrived. Her father ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted, which annoyed her, but she let it go. "I've been keeping track of what you're doing," he said. "Summit Ventures." "How?" "I have people who keep me informed." Of course he did. "It's impressive," he continued. "You've helped a lot of small businesses get off the ground, and you secured funding without any of my connections." "That was the point." "I know, and I respect it." She waited for the other shoe to drop. "But," he said, "you're also stretched too thin. You're working at a diner, running a nonprofit, and trying to stay involved with the company. That's not sustainable." "I'm managing, for now. But eventually something's going to break. So what are you suggesting?" He took a sip of his drink. "I want to invest in Summit." Victoria blinked. "What?" "Not as a takeover. As a partner. I'll provide capital and strategic support. You keep full operational control." "Why would you do that?" "Because I think it's a good investment, and because I want to support what you're building." She stared at him, waiting for the catch. "There's no catch," he said, reading her expression. There's always a catch. Not this time. He set his glass down. Victoria, I sent you away because I thought you needed to learn something, and you did. You learned how to build something on your own without relying on the name you were born with. That's more valuable than anything I could have taught you in a boardroom. She felt her throat tighten. You're proud of me? I've always been proud of you. I just wasn't sure you knew what you were capable of. And now? Now I think you do. For the first time in her life, her father looked at her like he actually saw her. I don't want your money if it means giving up control, she said carefully. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? For you to let me help. Not because I think you need it, but because I want to be part of what you're building. She thought about it. About Summit. About the people she was helping. About the future she was trying to create. I need time to think about it, she said. Take all the time you need. They ate in relative silence after that. The food was good, but Victoria barely tasted it. Her mind was spinning. When the check came, her father paid without hesitation. Outside, he walked her to her truck. Thank you for coming, he said. Thanks for asking. He hesitated, then said, You've become someone I didn't expect, but someone I'm glad to know. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded. On the drive home, she replayed the conversation in her head. Her father wanted to help. Actually help. Without strings attached. She didn't know if she could trust it, but maybe that was the point. Maybe trust was something you built, not something you assumed. When she got home, Ryan and Ava were on the couch watching a movie. How'd it go? Ryan asked. Better than I expected. That's good. Ava climbed off the couch and hugged her. Did you have fun? Not exactly, but it was okay. Ryan paused the movie. You want to talk about it? Later. Right now I just want to sit here. So she did. She sat between Ryan and Ava, not talking, just being present. And for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. Over the next few days, Victoria thought about her father's offer. She talked to Elena, to Sarah, to a few of the entrepreneurs she'd been working with. Everyone had opinions, but no one could tell her what to do. Finally, she sat down with Ryan. I think I'm going to take it, she said. They were in the backyard. Ryan was building a small table for Ava's room. Victoria was sitting on the porch steps, watching him work. Why? He asked. Because it's a good opportunity, and because I think my father actually means it. You sure? No, but I don't think I'll ever be sure, Luck. Ryan set down his tools. Then trust your gut. My gut's been wrong before. So has everyone's. She smiled despite herself. You make everything sound so simple. It usually is. We just complicate it. He went back to work, and she sat there, watching the way he measured twice before cutting, the way he didn't rush, the way he built things to last. That night she called her father. I'll take the investment, she said, but I have conditions. I'm listening. I keep full operational control. You're a silent partner, no decisions without my approval. Agreed. And if you try to take over, the deal's off. Understood. She paused. Why are you agreeing so easily? Because I trust you, and because I'm tired of fighting. She didn't know what to say to that. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork, he said. We'll finalize everything by the end of the month. Okay? Victoria? Yeah? I'm proud of you. I don't say it enough, but I am. She felt tears prick her eyes. Thanks, Dad. After they hung up, she sat on the porch for a long time, staring at the stars. Ryan came out and sat next to her. You okay? Yeah, just processing. Big day. Yeah. He put his arm around her, and she leaned into him. I couldn't have done this without you, she said. Yes, you could have. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to. They sat there in the quiet, and Victoria realized something she hadn't expected. She was happy. Not in a fleeting, temporary way, but in a deep, grounded way that felt like it might actually last. By March, Summit had expanded to 5 towns and was working with over 30 entrepreneurs. The investment from her father had allowed them to hire 2 more coordinators and rent a proper office space. Victoria had stepped back from the diner, though she still stopped by on weekends to help Rosie during the rush. One Saturday morning, she was refilling coffee when Tom came in. He sat down at his usual spot, but something was different. He looked lighter somehow. You okay? Victoria asked. Better than okay, he said. I talked to my daughter, told her I'm not moving. This is my home, and I'm staying. How'd she take it? She wasn't happy, but she understood. He smiled. Sometimes you have to choose what's right for you, even if other people don't agree. Victoria felt something settle in her chest. Yeah, you do. Later that afternoon, she was at the Summit office when Marcus stopped by. I wanted to show you something, he said. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of his newly expanded shop. 3 new bays, state-of-the-art equipment, a waiting area with actual chairs. It's perfect, Victoria said. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. Maybe. But it would have taken a lot longer. After he left, Elena came over. You know what you've done, right? What? You've changed people's lives, not just helped them. Changed them. Victoria looked around the office, at the whiteboards covered in business plans, at the files full of success stories, at the people who'd come through the door with nothing but an idea and walked out with a path forward. We did this together, she said. No, you started it. We just helped. That night, Victoria sat down and wrote a letter, not to her father, to herself. She wrote about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, the one who thought power came from control, who measured success in deals closed and boardrooms dominated, who didn't know how to exist outside the identity she'd been given. And she wrote about the woman she was now, the one who understood that real strength came from showing up, that success wasn't about being the smartest person in the room, but about helping others find their own answers. That identity was something you built, not something you inherited. She didn't know if she'd ever read the letter again, but writing it felt important, like closing a chapter she'd been trying to finish for years. In early April, Ryan asked her to move out of the guest room. Wait, what? Victoria said, her heart dropping. They were in the kitchen. Ava was at a friend's house. It was just the 2 of them. Not out of the house, Ryan said quickly. Just out of the guest room. I don't understand. He took a breath. Move into my room, with me. She stared at him. Are you serious? Yeah. Why? Because I love you, and because I'm tired of pretending this is temporary. She felt her heart stutter. You love me? Yeah, I do. Since when? I don't know. A while. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You could have said something. I just did. She looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd taken her in when she had nothing, who taught her what it meant to show up, who'd believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. I love you too, she said. He smiled. Okay. So you'll move? Yeah, I'll move. That night they told Ava. Victoria's going to stay in Dad's room now, Ryan said. Ava looked between them. Does that mean you're married? No, Victoria said, laughing. Not yet. But eventually? Ryan looked at Victoria. Maybe. Ava seemed satisfied with that. Okay. Can we have ice cream? Sure. They sat around the table eating ice cream, and Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Beb. A week later, Victoria got a call from her father. I'm stepping down, he said. She almost dropped her phone. What? I'm retiring, effective end of the year. Why? Because I'm tired, and because I want to do something else with my time. Like what? I don't know yet. Maybe travel, maybe volunteer, maybe just sit on a beach and read. Victoria couldn't imagine her father doing any of those things. But then again, she couldn't have imagined herself here 6 months ago. What about the company? She asked. I'm promoting Eleanor to CEO. She's been with me for 15 years. She's ready. And me? You stay on the board. You consult when you want to, but you keep doing what you're doing. It's more important. She felt tears sting her eyes. You really mean that? I do. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned it. After they hung up, Victoria sat in her office, staring at the wall. Her father was stepping down. After 40 years of running the company, of defining himself by his work, he was choosing to walk away. And he was doing it so she could stay. She thought about everything that had happened. The failed deal, the exile, the diner, Ryan, Ava, Summit, all the moments that had brought her here. She'd thought her father was punishing her, but maybe he'd been freeing her. That night, she told Ryan, "My father's retiring," she said. They were lying in bed, the window open, a cool breeze coming through. "How do you feel about that?" Ryan asked. "I don't know. Relieved, I think, and grateful." "For what?" "For being forced to leave. If he hadn't, I'd still be in that boardroom pretending to be someone I'm not." Ryan pulled her closer. "You would have figured it out eventually." "Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to wait that long." They lay there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the house settling around them. "You know what's weird?" Victoria said. "What?" "I used to think success meant having power, being in control, making decisions that affected thousands of people. And now? Now I think success means helping one person at a time, building something that actually matters, showing up. That's not weird, that's growth." She smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." She laughed and kissed him. And in that moment, everything felt right. Summer arrived, and with it came a heat that made the whole town slow down. Victoria spent her days at Summit, working with entrepreneurs, securing more funding, expanding the program to neighboring counties. She also started speaking at conferences, sharing what she'd learned about building businesses from the ground up, about the difference between managing and actually helping, about the importance of showing up even when you didn't know what you were doing. People listened, and slowly, Summit's reputation grew. One afternoon in July, Victoria was at the office when Sarah came in with a newspaper. "You need to see this," Sarah said, setting it on Victoria's desk. It was a feature article about Summit. The headline read, "From Corporate Heir to Community Builder, How One Woman Redefined Success." Victoria read the article twice. It talked about her fall from grace, her time in the town, and the organization she'd built. It quoted several of the entrepreneurs she'd worked with, all of them saying things that made her chest feel tight. "This is going to bring in a lot of attention," Sarah said. "I know. Are you ready for that?" Victoria thought about it. 6 months ago, she would have panicked. Now, she just felt calm. "Yeah," she said. "I think I am." The article brought inquiries from other towns, other states, people who wanted to replicate what Summit was doing. Victoria spent weeks on calls explaining the model, offering advice, sharing what had worked and what hadn't. It was overwhelming, but it was also proof that what they were doing mattered. One evening in late August, Victoria and Ryan were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. "I've been thinking," Ryan said. "About what?" "About the future." She looked at him. "What about it?" "I want to marry you." Her heart stopped. "What?" "Not right now, but eventually, when we're ready." "Are you proposing?" "I'm pre-proposing, testing the waters." She laughed. "That's not a thing." "It is now." She looked at him, at the man who'd become her home, and felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I can propose later?" "Yes, I'll marry you." He smiled, pulled her close, and kissed her. Inside, Ava called out that dinner was ready. They went in, and Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years. Certainty. Not the kind that came from control or power or having all the answers, but the kind that came from knowing exactly where she belonged. By September, Summit had helped over 50 businesses launch. The organization had been featured in national publications, received multiple awards, and secured enough funding to operate for the next 5 years. Victoria's father came to visit, just to see what she'd built. He walked through the office, met the staff, talked to some of the entrepreneurs. When he was done, he pulled Victoria aside. "I'm impressed," he said. "Thanks. I mean it. You've built something real, something that matters." "I learned from the best," he smiled. "I don't know about that, but I'm glad you found your own way." They stood there for a moment, and Victoria realized something had shifted between them. They weren't adversaries anymore. They were just two people trying to do good work. "I'm proud of you, Victoria," he said. "I know. You keep saying that." "Because I mean it." She hugged him, and for the first time in her life, it didn't feel forced. That night, she sat down with Ryan and Ava and told them she wanted to have a family dinner every week. No phones, no work talk, just the three of them being present. Ava agreed immediately. Ryan smiled and said he'd been waiting for her to suggest it, and so they started a tradition. Every Sunday night, no matter how busy they were, they sat down together. Sometimes they talked about their weeks. Sometimes they played games. Sometimes they just ate in comfortable silence. But they showed up every single time. One year after Victoria had arrived in town, she stood in front of the community center at Summit's anniversary celebration. Over 100 people had shown up: entrepreneurs, volunteers, donors, town residents. Even Rosie had closed the diner early to be there. Victoria looked out at the crowd, feeling overwhelmed. "A year ago," she said, "I came to this town with nothing. No money, no plan, no idea what I was doing. I thought I'd lost everything." She paused, looking at Ryan and Ava in the front row. "But what I actually lost was the version of myself I thought I was supposed to be. And what I found was something better. A community. A purpose. A life I didn't know I wanted." She took a breath. "I used to think success meant being the most powerful person in the room. But I was wrong. Success means showing up for people, helping them build something they believe in, being part of something bigger than yourself." She looked around the room. "Summit exists because all of you showed up, because you believed in something, and because you were willing to do the hard work to make it real." She felt her voice catch. "So thank you for teaching me what it means to actually matter." The room erupted in applause. Afterward, people came up to thank her, to share their stories, to tell her how much Summit had changed their lives. Victoria listened to every single one, because that was the point. Not to be the hero of the story, but to help other people write their own. That night, after everyone had left, Victoria and Ryan sat on the hood of his truck, looking up at the stars. "You did good today," Ryan said. "We did good." "No, you did." He looked at her. "You took something broken and turned it into something beautiful. I didn't do it alone." "I know, but you started it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I spent my whole life trying to prove I was good enough. And the moment I stopped trying, I actually became the person I wanted to be. That's not funny. That's just true." She smiled. "Yeah, I guess it is." They sat there in the quiet, and Victoria thought about everything that had happened. The fall, the exile, the struggle, the growth. She'd lost everything. And in losing it, she'd found something better. She'd found herself. Not the version her father wanted. Not the version she thought she was supposed to be. Just herself. Flawed, imperfect, trying her best. And that was enough. Because showing up was enough. Trying was enough. Caring was enough. Power didn't come from control. It came from connection. Success wasn't about winning. It was about helping others succeed. And strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up and choosing to try again. Victoria had learned all of that the hard way. Through failure, through loss, through being stripped of everything she thought defined her. But she wouldn't change it. Because the woman she was now, the one sitting on this truck in this town with this man, was someone she was proud to be. Not because she was perfect, but because she was real. And that, she'd finally learned, was the only thing that mattered. 3 months later, Ryan proposed for real. They got married in the spring, in the backyard of the house where Victoria had first learned what home actually meant. Ava was the flower girl. Her father walked her down the aisle. And everyone from Summit was there, celebrating not just a wedding, but a woman who'd finally figured out what it meant to live. Victoria Hale wasn't defined by power anymore, or by inheritance, or by the name she'd been born with. She was defined by choice, by showing up, by building something that mattered. And for the first time in her life, that was more than enough. It was everything.